A Monday morning in the federal courthouse of Manhattan, the courtroom erupted when billionaire Ariana Lockhart stood alone. Her entire legal team had vanished minutes before trial. Ariana trembled before dozens of cameras. The judge raised his gavel. Then a voice cut through the silence. The man holding a mop in the corner stepped forward and said, "I will defend her." No one knew this janitor was once a legal genius buried for 15 years. But what made him step into the light at that exact moment? The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Every eye locked on the man in the blue janitor uniform standing near the back wall. He still held the mop handle in one hand. Judge Harold Brennan leaned forward over the bench, his glasses sliding down his nose. "Excuse me?" Elliot Warren stepped away from his cleaning cart. His work boots squeaked against the polished marble floor. He walked toward the defense table where Ariana Lockhart stood frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the wooden surface. "I said I will defend her," Elliot repeated. His voice was steady now, louder. "I'm a licensed attorney in the state of New York." The prosecutor, Marcus Holt, shot to his feet. He was a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Elliot made in 3 months. "Your Honor, this is absurd. This man is a janitor." He just interrupted a federal proceeding. Judge Brennan raised a hand. "Mr. Warren, is that your name?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you have proof of your license?" Elliot reached into the chest pocket of his uniform and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He flipped it open and produced a laminated card. He walked forward and handed it to the bailiff, who carried it up to the judge. Judge Brennan studied it for a long moment. His eyebrows lifted. "This shows you were admitted to the New York bar 23 years ago. It's still active, though it notes you haven't practiced in 15 years. He looked up. "Why is that?" Elliot met his gaze. "Personal reasons, Your Honor." Marcus Holt stepped forward. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Miss Lockhart had a legal team of 6 attorneys from one of the top firms in the city. They withdrew this morning. Now a courthouse custodian wants to represent her in a federal theft case? This is a mockery of the judicial system." Judge Brennan set the card down. He looked at Ariana. "Miss Lockhart, do you consent to this representation?" Ariana turned her head slowly. She looked at Elliot for the first time. Her eyes were red, her mascara smudged. She had been crying. She studied his face, searching for something. Then she nodded. "Yes, I do." The judge exhaled. "Very well. Mr. Warren, you have 72 hours to prepare. We reconvene Thursday morning at 9. Court is adjourned." He struck the gavel once. The room exploded. Reporters shouted questions. Camera flashes lit up the space like fireworks. Ariana grabbed her purse and turned toward the side exit. Elliot followed her. 2 security guards flanked them as they pushed through the crowd and into a narrow hallway. They didn't speak until they were outside. The cold November air hit them like a slap. Ariana pulled her coat tighter and walked toward a black car waiting at the curb. Elliot stayed a few steps behind. She stopped and turned. "Get in." Elliot hesitated. "I need to clock out first." "No, get in now." He climbed into the back seat. The driver pulled away from the courthouse. Ariana sat on the opposite side, staring out the window. For 5 minutes, neither of them said a word. The car wound through Manhattan traffic, heading uptown. Finally, she spoke. "Why did you do that?" Elliot looked at his hands. They were rough, scarred from years of manual labor. "I don't know." "That's not an answer." He looked up. "I've been cleaning that courtroom for 3 years. I've watched you sit through every hearing. I've seen your lawyers argue motions, file briefs, cross-examine witnesses, and I've seen them lose. Badly." Ariana's jaw tightened. "They didn't lose. They quit. Same result." She turned to face him fully. "Do you know who I am?" "Ariana Lockhart. You run Lockhart Quantum Technologies. You developed some kind of energy breakthrough that threatens the oil and gas industry. And now someone's trying to bury you with a bogus theft charge." Her eyes narrowed. "How do you know it's bogus?" "Because I read the case files." How? I clean the courthouse at night. Judges leave documents on their desks. I have access. He shrugged. And I have insomnia. The car pulled up to a sleek glass tower on the Upper East Side. The driver opened the door. Ariana stepped out and looked back at Elliot. Come on, we have work to do. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park. The furniture was modern, minimal. Everything was white or gray or steel. Ariana walked to a large dining table covered with cardboard boxes. She gestured to them. That's everything. Contracts, emails, financial records, lab reports. My old legal team went through it all and told me we had no case. She crossed her arms. You have 72 hours to find something they missed. Elliot set down his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. I'll need coffee. Kitchen's that way. He started with the emails. There were thousands of them, printed and organized in binders. He scanned each one, looking for inconsistencies, gaps, anything that felt wrong. At first, nothing stood out. The language was technical, dense, references to quantum entanglement, photon efficiency, energy conversion rates. He barely understood half of it. But then he noticed something. A thread between Ariana and her former assistant, Julia Marsh. The tone shifted halfway through. In the earlier messages, Julia was warm, supportive. She called Ariana brilliant and unstoppable. But in the later emails, her language became colder, more formal. And then the messages stopped entirely. Elliot flipped to the contract files. He found Julia's employment agreement. It was standard except for one clause buried near the end, a non-compete provision that seemed oddly broad. It prohibited her from working in any capacity related to quantum energy research for 5 years after leaving the company. That was unusual. Most non-competes were limited to direct competitors. He opened his laptop and searched for Julia's name. She had a LinkedIn profile. According to it, she left Lockhart Quantum in March of the previous year. 2 months later, she joined Nexus Corp as a technology consultant. Nexus Corp. The company suing Ariana for theft. Elliot leaned back in his chair. It was past midnight now. Ariana sat across from him, reviewing documents with sharp focus. He watched her work for a moment. She hadn't given up. Even after her lawyers abandoned her, even facing public humiliation, she kept fighting. He stood and walked to the window. The city stretched out below, a grid of lights and shadows. He thought about the last time he had stood in a courtroom as a lawyer. 15 years ago, he had been 30 years old, confident, hungry. He had taken on a case defending a journalist named Robert Hayes. Hayes had published an exposé on government corruption, naming senators, lobbyists, shell companies funneling illegal campaign funds. Powerful people wanted him silenced. The trial had started well. Elliot had witnesses, documents, recordings. Then the witnesses disappeared. One died in a car accident. Another recanted his testimony. The documents vanished from the evidence locker, and Elliot found himself accused of fabricating evidence. He was cleared eventually, but the damage was done. His reputation was destroyed. No firm would hire him. Clients avoided him. And then his wife, Claire, died. A hit-and-run driver on a rainy night. The police never found who did it, but Elliot knew. He had no proof, but he knew. She had been a warning, a message to stop digging, so he stopped. He quit the law. For 12 years, he worked odd jobs, moved from city to city, trying to outrun the past. Then he settled in New York and took a job as a janitor at the courthouse 3 years ago. He raised his daughter, Mia, alone. He told himself it was safer this way, quieter. No one would come after a man who pushed a mop for a living. But watching Ariana stand alone in that courtroom had cracked something open inside him. He saw himself 15 years ago. He saw Claire. He saw every person who had been crushed by people with money and power and no conscience. He walked back to the table and kept reading. By 3 in the morning, he had found it. A series of internal emails from Nexus Corp that Ariana's legal team had somehow overlooked. They were part of a discovery dump, buried in a folder labeled Miscellaneous correspondence. The emails were between David Corbin, the CEO of Nexus, and a man named Leonard Price, who appeared to be a consultant. The subject line of the first email read, "Lockhart situation next steps." Elliot clicked it open. David Corbin had written, "We need to move faster. Her technology could cut energy costs by 80% within 5 years. If that goes mainstream, we're dead. How do we stop it?" Leonard Price had replied, "Legal route is cleanest. We have Julia on payroll. She can copy the research data and will claim Lockhart stole it from us. Frame it as corporate espionage. Media will eat it up." Elliot's hands shook as he scrolled through the rest of the thread. There were more emails. Plans to bribe witnesses. Discussions about paying off Ariana's lawyers to sabotage her defense. References to contingency measures if the lawsuit didn't work. He printed everything. Then he called to Ariana. She looked up from her work. "What time is it?" "Late. You need to see this." He spread the emails across the table. She read them slowly, her face going pale. When she finished, she looked up at him. "They planned this from the beginning." "Yes. My lawyers knew. That's why they left. Probably." She stood and walked to the window. Her reflection stared back at her in the dark glass. "My technology works. It's real. I've spent 10 years developing it. Do you know what it could do? It could provide clean energy to 1 billion people. It could end dependence on fossil fuels. It could change everything." Her voice cracked. "And they want to kill it because it threatens their profit margins." Elliot joined her at the window. "That's how the world works. Then the world is broken." "Yes, it is." She turned to him. "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. You have nothing to gain from this. If anything, you're putting yourself in danger." Elliot thought about Mia. She was 13 now, smart, curious, stubborn like her mother. He worked 2 jobs to keep her in a decent school, to make sure she had a chance at a better life. Every night, when he came home at 4 in the morning, exhausted and smelling of cleaning chemicals, he wondered if she would grow up thinking her father was a quitter, a man who gave up. He looked at Ariana. "Because someone has to." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, what do we do next?" "We take this to court. We expose them, and we make sure they can't hide." They worked through the rest of the night. Elliot drafted motions, organized evidence, prepared arguments. Ariana answered his questions about the technology, explained the science in terms he could understand. By the time the sun came up, they had a strategy. As Elliot gathered his papers to leave, his phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. He opened it. There were no words, just a photo. It showed Mia walking into her school, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Below the photo, a second message appeared. "If he continues, she won't have a father anymore." Elliot stared at the screen. His chest tightened. He felt the air leave his lungs. Ariana noticed. "What is it?" He showed her the phone. She read the message and her face went white. "You should walk away, right now. I'll find someone else." Elliot locked the phone and slipped it into his pocket. He picked up his briefcase. "No, they're threatening your daughter." "I know." "Then why?" "Because if I walk away now, I'm teaching her that the right thing to do is run when things get hard. I'm teaching her that people with power always win. I'm teaching her that justice doesn't matter." He looked at Ariana. "I won't do that." She stared at him, her eyes wet. "You could lose everything." "I already did, 15 years ago." He moved toward the door. "This time, I'm not running." Elliot went home that morning but didn't sleep. He sat at the small kitchen table in his Queens apartment and drank coffee until his hands shook. The threat replayed in his mind. The photo of Mia. The message. He thought about calling the police. But what would he say? Someone sent him a picture? That wasn't a crime. Not yet. At 7:30, he called Mia's school and asked them to keep her inside during recess. He told them there had been a security concern. The principal asked questions. Elliot gave vague answers and hung up. Then he called his neighbor, Mrs. Chen. an elderly woman who had helped him with Mia over the years. He asked if Mia could stay with her for the rest of the week. Mrs. Chen agreed without asking why. Elliot showered, changed into his janitor uniform, and went to work. The courthouse staff stared at him differently now. Word had spread. The janitor was representing a billionaire. Some laughed. Others whispered. When Elliot pushed his cart down the third-floor hallway, 2 paralegals stopped talking and watched him pass. One of them smirked. "Good luck with that case, counselor," the man said. His colleague laughed. Elliot kept walking. He had 72 hours to prepare for trial. He couldn't afford to waste energy on humiliation. That night, he clocked out at 11 and returned to Ariana's penthouse. She was waiting with more files. They worked until 4 in the morning. Then Elliot went home, slept for 2 hours, and returned to the courthouse to mop floors. By Wednesday night, he was running on fumes. His body ached, his eyes burned, but the case was ready. Thursday morning arrived. Elliot put on the only suit he owned. It was 15 years old, slightly too tight around the shoulders, but it was clean. He met Ariana outside the courthouse at 8:30. She wore a charcoal gray suit and no jewelry. Her hair was pulled back. She looked calm, but Elliot saw the tension in her jaw. "Ready?" she asked. "No," Elliot said. "But we're going anyway." The courtroom was packed.